But goddamn, get it done, will ya? Woo. When the blow up now, everybody's so unusual with it. Shit. But said times in these rhymes, cause his memories. We running through New York.
Okay guys, welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be going over the E53 X5, common problems and things you need to look out for on these cars if you're thinking about purchasing one. Now, I've done a lot of videos of why you should buy one of these, but I'm going to now explain to you all the common problems and things that actually come with owning these cars. And I'm not going to go over it based on the engine because this is a diesel engine. I'm going to go over it based on the chassis itself, because it's very important that a lot of these things are addressed on these cars, and this does apply to all the E53s, some with air suspension, some with not, but there's a lot of problems on the chassis more than there is on the engine side. So as you'll see here guys, this is an E53 BMW X5. Now there is a lot of problems on this car that a lot of people are not aware of when they go to purchase one. Now as these age, and obviously they've aged beautifully, but they still are going to have a lot of their issues, and there's a lot of people who are not aware of the issues that will come with owning one of these cars. So I'm going to show you the issues that actually come with owning one of these cars and what you need to look out for when you're going to buy one, and all the common problems that you're going to end up coming across owning one of these. So the first one, and we're going to start from the rear, is the number plate light strip. Now I have spoke about this quite a lot on the BMW X5s, and you guys know I'll say about it in all my videos, and this is purely because this is a common issue. What ends up happening is a lot of people don't ever clean the cars enough, and it ends up building up a lot of crap, and it seeps through the seal because it always breaks. Then it ends up corroding all the connections for the number plate bulb itself. Then what ends up happening is you end up getting a thing on the dash telling you number plate light's not working or number plate light faulty, and that's because of them being corroded. And a lot of people think it's the bulbs. They go around replacing the bulbs, only to find out that it's actually the number plate strip itself, and you need to order a new one and have it all rewired because it's not working. Another one you need to watch out for is if you've got air suspension on these cars, which a lot of them do, especially the sports, especially here in the UK, you have the air ride suspension. Now the airbags can tend to leak and leak air, and what will end up happening is one side will sit lower than the other, and if the compressor's on its way out, they'll both be sitting low down. So that's a good telltale sign to know when it's time to actually change the compressor, because both will be sitting. If your airbag's leaking, you only get one side down, and the air compressor will be coming on constantly to have to compensate for the loss of air in one of the airbags. If you do notice that, they're not hard to change. You can jack it up and actually remove them and get to them very easily and replace the airbag. But bear in mind, make sure you get it changed, because what will end up happening, the longer you leave it running without air and the air compressor's having to compensate for that, you end up burning out the compressor which sits in the boot here, which is under the spare wheel. You would have seen in my other videos how to locate that, and it will end up burning out the compressor, the piston ring inside the compressor, and you'll have to then buy a whole new compressor for the car, which they are very common and they used a lot, because as I've said to you before, the Range Rover used the same compressor inside theirs for the air suspension, so you'll find it very hard to source. But they do rebuild kits for the compressor ring itself, but it's not easy to do, so I do advise just buy a new one for the hassle you're going to go through repairing it, and make sure you sort that. The next common problem on these is the CV axles at the front. Now I've had many of them where the CV axles and the CV boot have ruptured and leaked all the grease out, and that can be devastating for the whole car. You can end up losing control, and you also feel a knocking, a clunking. Not only a clunking, you end up probably losing control of the whole car, losing the whole wheel. It's very important that you check them, turn all the wheels. This car sits quite high up, so when you go to view one, you'll be able to see the CV axles and the CV gator boots all over before you even buy it, and just make sure you get under and actually check them. I would advise going in dirty clothes to be able to check these cars, because you'll have to get on the floor and just make sure you actually check them, because if they're warm, they're not hard to do, but they can be sometimes fiddly to do. And obviously the CV gator boots are not expensive, but if they lose their grease, you might end up with having to buy a whole new axle for that side as well. Now another common problem on these, which I've spoke about quite a lot on them, is the wheel balancers on these alloys. Now I have told a lot of you guys on these cars, the wheel balancers like to come off when they're jet washed. This is a common issue on them, and I've had it across every X5, including this one when I bought it. When people take their cars to be washed, they take them to be jet washed and they spray inside the wheels, and as you'll see right here, the balancers are here. So when they spray, these are just stuck on, they end up blowing them off, and when they blow the balancers off, you'll end up with rumbling coming through your steering wheel, or you'll feel like a shaking coming through the whole car at like 50-60 miles an hour, and it can get more and more severe. Now, I got lucky when I had these wheels balancing, only one of them was out by 130, but that's still a lot for one wheel. I've had X5s where they've all been out on all four, and it's literally destroyed the CV axles and the boots, as I've told you about, on these cars, for the wheel balancers actually being out and people just driving like it and not knowing what was the cause. This was no exception. This is the same thing. So if you do have any of that, make sure you check that, because usually it's the wheel balancers that go out. It's a common issue, and most people actually know that, but a lot of people are actually lazy to just take it and have the wheels balanced. The next one on these is to make sure all your xenons work if you've got xenons fitted. Now, these didn't have xenons, these have got projectors, but these just use normal halogen bulbs. Make sure also that your halo rings are working on the lights, because I've seen many of them where the halo rings don't work and they don't pass the MOT or inspection because the lights ain't working. The halo rings do come on, and they're usually on a lot of the time. Same with the projector lens as well. Just make sure everything's working, especially the ballast, because they're quite expensive on if they have the factory xenons. The ballast are very expensive, and so especially the bulbs, they're very expensive as well. So do make sure to check all that on the X5 as well, and just make sure it's actually all working. The next one on these I'm going to speak about is the electric mirrors. Now, if you'll see under here, they have puddle lights on them. Now, if you've got the electric power fold mirrors, the cogs inside them, I would advise you not to use them, because they do like to break, and they will break and then leave you without power fold mirrors, and they'll be stuck. It is a common issue on them. They will break, especially in cold weather, and the cogs inside break. They do a repair kit, but you don't want to be sitting there having to repair the whole mirror to repair all the cogs. So be careful with that, and try not to use the power fold so much. I know, because one of my family members have an X5 and they broke them as well, and they got power fold mirrors on it and it's broke. So that's why I tend not to use them on this either, because I know they're going to break at some point. I just don't want it to be now, because I don't want to have to go through the headache of actually having to repair that. But I know later on I'm going to have to at some point, so therefore I'm probably going to rebuild them before they actually end up breaking. Now, the next one on these, which is very well known on the E53 X5s, is the door handles. These are no exception, and I think everyone knows about these, and the strap inside that connects it to the handle to pull it open, which is plastic and it ends up breaking. These are the main issue of the E53 X5, and everybody knows about this, and this is why a lot of people get scared of them, because you're always having to replace door handles. Now, majority of the time why these break is because either it's freezing and all the snow or the ice gets stuck to the handle and they can't open. That's why you're meant to use de-icer on the handles to break all the ice down so it doesn't freeze it. Another reason is people not opening them properly, because what a lot of people do is they just yank them like this, which breaks the carrier, instead of lifting them up and opening the door like that. They end up just yanking the handle, and a lot of the time it's usually kids and people who don't know how to open these handles, because they buy one of these cars and they just expect the handle to pull out like a normal car. Now, there is a lot of normal cars out there that you just pull the handle and it comes outwards, and which BMW should have done. They shouldn't have made it go up, they should have made it where it come out to open the doors. But you know, that's BMW. They've done it on the E70s and E60s, but they didn't on the E53, and this is what causes all these issues with the handles. Now, the majority of them that do break, it depends on how much what ones use the most. So for instance, if it's your driver's side one, try and be careful, take your family out and do a training course with them on how to look after the door handles on the car and how to open them, because if not, it's usually the kids that break them, because they're quite short. So when they go to open a door, they're pulling it, trying to get it open. Or another habit is slamming the doors. They're very heavy doors. This car is very heavy, so just be careful with that, and make sure you teach them on how to open the door handles. Like I said, the handles, you hold it and you pull it upwards, so make sure to pull it up and open it like that. Do not yank it like this, which a lot of the kids end up doing. Even mine do it, and I have to tell them about it. I've had to take them out and actually train them on how to open the doors so they do not break the handles. Another thing for preservative maintenance on these to look after the door handles is to grease all the latches, which is all down here. Grease all the latches. Now, when you take it to MOT here or for a health check, they will grease all the latches here to make it easier to open. This is something that a lot of garages do here. When you take your X5 in to be checked or a health check, they'll grease all the latches, something you can have done, and just make it more easy to open so it doesn't break, so it doesn't sit there sticking, so that way you can open it with ease and not have to worry about breaking the handles. Now, another common problem on the E53 X5, and this actually relates to a lot of cars, even E60s, with the diamond key, is the ignition switch, which sits in here. You'll get crank, no crank and no start, where the car's not even cranking over, and it's the ignition switch in here. The contacts on it end up building up a load of dirt, and a lot of the time it's from people, when the steering lock is fully locked, they're trying to turn the key in there to release steering lock without actually moving the wheel to release the steering lock. What they end up doing is damaging the contacts on the ignition switch itself, and then they'll realise that their car is not starting anymore. This is a common problem on these, and they do go out the ignition switch. I think this one has just been changed because, as you can see here, the cowling's been removed before, so I think this one's previously just been changed, but the owner hasn't told me anything, but I have a feeling it has been changed, because the only reason someone would need to remove the cowling here is if they needed to access that ignition switch, which is a common problem on them, and I'm already aware of that. So if you are getting no crank, no start on your E53, or you go to buy an E53 and you read on the post that it's doing no crank, no start and the car's not starting, it will be the ignition switch which sits on the ignition on the key itself. As you see, you've got the ignition, and it's got like a little spike on it that connects to the switch itself, and there's little pins on there that actually connect onto the block, and they are not turning, they're not actually sending the signal to the relay, to the fuse, making no contact. So therefore that's what's stopping your car cranking and starting. And no, you cannot clean it, you will have to replace it. Do not be cheap, they're only about 15 quid for a brand new one. Go and replace it and your car will start. The next one I want to speak to you guys about on the common problems on the E53 is the windows. Now if you see here this seal, what ends up happening is the window gets stuck in the seal here, especially if it's snowing or it's cold, and it won't come down. And what a lot of people do is use the button on the windows, and they will go up and down like that to try and make the window come down. Don't do that. What you do is spray WD-40 silicone all around the window sills itself. It's where they've dried out over the years and they've got the lubrication, and then the windows will roll down nicely and go back up nicely. Window regulators is another common problem on the E53, from them actually breaking. A lot of people are already aware of that. And the motors, it's where people try and open them with the snow or the freezing cold, then it all goes into the window regulator and destroys the window regulator inside and the motor. Therefore, try and be careful with them, and try and just spray WD-40 to keep them lubricated so they're open with ease. Don't ever open them in the cold or the snow. Try and keep them shut, otherwise they will end up breaking the window regulator and the motor. Now another common problem on these cars, which I want to explain to you right now, is if you buy another E53 and you realise you've got a battery drain, a parasitic draw, or your heaters are not working now, and you go to pull it up on the full heat, you'll realise the heaters will stop working. That's a common problem. Then when you put it back down to cold, it will start working again. The main common culprit for that is the final stage resistor, which lives down here behind this casing here. It's not very easy to get to, but it is doable and you can do it. I've done it many times on these, and it lives behind here in a box. It's like a little hedgehog. If you look up final stage resistor, you'll see it. They're common and they are known to go, and they cause battery drainage, and they also will stop your heating working. Now the final stage resistors are known to cause a parasitic draw and drain your battery. If your heaters are not working, just replace it. Final stage resistors again are not expensive, they're about 20 quid, and replace it and get a new one. Now the sticky ignition as well will cause your battery to drain as well if the circuit is sticking. Not only that, you want to get that replaced, because a lot of people tend to leave that and start it, and what will end up happening, it will get worse and worse, and then will leave you stranded to the point you're going to need breakdown cover because your car will not start. So the moment you actually see that, where you're having to keep turning the key, and all of a sudden it will fire up, change it immediately. You'll know if it's that, because if you keep turning the key, cycling the key, leaving it, wait for it to go cold, then having to start it, that will be your ignition circuit inside there. Make sure you change it. It is a common problem. Now another one on these, which a lot of people are not even aware of, is if you get one of the X5s with the sat-nav screen like this, then you go and buy it and you're on your way home, and then you realise, oh, I've got no sound from my speakers, or why can I hear sound from this speaker but not the driver's side speaker, or vice versa, or you can't hear the sound in the back and you're trying to adjust all the treble, the balance, and it ain't working. That will be your BM54 module. Now, if you go on my other videos, you will see the BM54 module is basically the amplifier for the whole stereo. This is just a screen that displays everything from the modules in the boot. This is just the screen. Everything is connected to their module. So the BM54 module controls the radio tuner and the speaker output for the system. Now, there is people that actually upgrade them and fix them for cheap. If you do have that issue, remove it, send it off for repair, and you'll get all your sound back, and you will also get a lot better sound quality as well, because they can upgrade the chips, they can put pre-outs in it, they can also put Bluetooth audio in it. So do not panic, it's not a big deal if you don't have no sound. I know a lot of people will get in these and realise the car's got no sound, or you'll see it online when you're going to buy it, people saying that the stereo is giving no sound at all. Nobody knows what's happened. It's the BM54 module. Common issue, and it's very well known across the whole BMW community now regarding the BM54 modules. Now the next one is the electric steering column. Now I have mentioned that in my previous videos. Do not be shocked if you go to get one and it says electric steering column, next thing it's not working. It is a common failure below 2005, and the cogs end up breaking in it. They're not hard to repair. I have done it many times on these cars and on the E60s. I've repaired them many times. Usually the cogs break, but this one is fully functional, as it's 2006, so it's the last year. So it is fully functional and it functions in and out. But if you go and buy one and it's not working, get the cogs and just repair it. It's not hard to repair at all. And you know, you do need it, because otherwise the steering wheel will be sitting in a very wonky position. It'll go into a default setting where you won't be able to move it, and trust me, you don't want that on this car, especially with electric steering column, because it will go up and you won't be able to move it and it'll feel like you're driving a damn bus. So just be aware of that as well, to make sure that actually works. Now the next one on these, which a lot of people are not aware, but I know in the US you guys don't care about this because you've got the park, but in the UK is the handbrake. If you've ever owned an E39 or E46, you know how bad this year, when BMW were designing cars, how bad the handbrakes were. And BMW are still known for their handbrakes even on the E60, but it was really bad on this year. The handbrakes seem to lose their hold. It's a common issue, and they need readjusting probably every year just to maintain their hold. Now don't get it twisted, this is a big heavy car, but on the same sense, these handbrakes just do not hold. I had the same thing on my E39. I've just readjusted this one now the same way I did on my E39, and now it's holding. But every single car I get, especially the E53, 39, E46, the handbrakes never tend to hold. And now this one is finally holding, but if you do get one, you'll probably realize you'll go to put it in neutral or drive and you'll feel your car rolling. Do not worry about it. Just adjust the handbrake from the rear on the shoes and adjust it from under here as well on the pins to make sure you adjust your handbrake, because it is a common issue and you don't have to worry about it so much. But if you buy a manual, you will have to worry about it. But on an auto, you don't have to worry about it so much, because you've got the park, so it does hold the car, and obviously you've got the foot braking when you're at the lights. But on a manual, it is something you're going to need to sort out like immediately, because the handbrake is a known weak point here and they do fail. I adjusted, like I said, adjusting mine because I replaced all the brakes, but you guys will probably have to do the same as well, because this hasn't been the first E53 I've got with a terrible handbrake. So there you have it, guys. As I said, there isn't really much on the E53 X5 that actually goes wrong. Module wise, is not really much modules or electronics that actually go wrong. You can have any basic diagnostic scanner with only one of these cars. You don't actually have to use ISTA, because these cars are very straightforward. But anything up, like for E70 or upwards, you will need to have ISTA. But for these, you don't really need to, because there isn't so much electronic modules on these that you're going to need it for, and there isn't many problems that anything can't be sorted with a normal original scanner. These cars are very basic and very easy to work on, and very cheap. The electronics on them are actually good and don't suffer any issues whatsoever. You just have to check the main things. Just make sure how a car would be checked in MOT. Just check it that way, the same way you go. If you don't feel comfortable, make sure to go and get an independent inspection. I knew what I was buying. I knew the issues it had when I bought it, and that's why I bought it. I've done everything it needed, and that's about it. As I said, I bought this X5 with cooling issues. So for instance, the temperature wasn't coming up to temperature where the thermostat was stuck, and that's bad for a diesel. It had been sitting for over a year, so the brake pads and discs were completely gone. Handbrake wasn't holding, so it just had a number of faults with the car that I needed to address. Glow plugs weren't working, so it was failing this MOT. I sorted everything. I got it for cheap, sorted it out, we did everything, and now the car runs and drives like a dream. Like I say, it's very low mileage and I'm very happy with it. But if you go and buy an E53 X5, just make sure to actually check all these things that I've gone over with you, because it is important. They are not hard or fiddly. Like I say, the ignition and the final stage, even if them two are gone, it's 40 quid together, and they're both 10-minute jobs maximum to be able to do, and you'll get a good running car. Air suspension isn't hard either on these. The airbags are very easy to replace. Air suspension compressor could be hard to come by because it's used in the Range Rover. Apart from that though, there's really nothing else that actually fails on this car. Like I say, it is a reliable car providing you look after it. Air suspension is the biggest worry, because as I said, if it goes down, you feel like you're riding a horse, because it becomes very hard. So just make sure to check them, because that is the most important part of the car for the ride itself. The E39 estate actually used the air suspension system as well, so it followed on from that. So a lot of you, if you've come from the E39 estate, you'll already be aware of how the air suspension actually works on the E53 as well. So I hope now this will help you if you're in the market to go and purchase a BMW E53 X5. I've now gone over all the common problems. As I said, there isn't really many on this car like there is on the newer cars, for instance, because a lot of it is all electronics. On this car, it doesn't really have many electronics, and secondly, a lot of the electronics don't go faulty on this car. The only reason they do go faulty is if you've got the panoramic sunroof and the drains start leaking, or any kind of sunroof and it gets into the GM module, it will cause a short circuit and the car won't start. But apart from that, a lot of the problems on these are easily fixable, and there's a lot of information out there now because these cars have aged very well, and where they've aged, people have learnt all the problems, and it makes them very, very cheap and economical to actually look after. Everything is out there for these cars, so any repair you need will be on YouTube, or you'll find it on the forum. It's very easy to address all the common issues on this car. So thank you very much for watching, guys. It's BMW Dr. Dean here, and if you haven't subscribed already, please go ahead and subscribe. Thank you very much, and goodbye.